Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by BKCW. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined every day by Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton. Be sure to tell us where you're checking in from and what you're drinking this morning. Get your questions in, especially those recruiting questions, as we got a lot to talk about with recruiting here in a little bit. But first, guys, the big news yesterday, and of course, it happened while we were live. Blake Gideon leaving Texas to become the defensive coordinator at Georgia Tech.
Yeah, first of all, congratulations to Blake.
Yes.
Right? I mean, I think this is a move up in his career. He's, 34, 35 years old, and he's already a major college defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
He is on a path to become a head coach. This is that path for him. So very, very happy for him. And I wrote about this morning on ontexasfootball.com. Look, it's bittersweet for me to see him go. And I think I was searching for the word yesterday, but I think that's the case. He literally is he's just a lifetime Longhorn. Was here the minute and Jerry, you and I both know, we went back, we've talked about his recruitment. He was at Leander. His dad was the head coach at Leander. He was not heavily recruited. And a lot of those guys that Mac brought in that weren't heavily recruited, they didn't really do well. Compared to the mega stars that he was recruiting and the guys like a Jordan Shipley, for example, heavily recruited that ended up being a guy for Texas. But all he did as a Texas Longhorn came in, I think, what was it, 08? After Texas had kind of established itself as one of the nation's premier programs, came in 08. There was a guy rated ahead of him at the same position. In that class, there were guys already on campus that were rated higher than he was. And all he did was start 4 years at the University of Texas. And, did he have a memorable play that went the wrong direction on him? Yes. Nobody will ever forget, including Blake, the drop at Texas Tech. But I'm just here to tell you, there's no one that bleeds burnt orange more.
Yeah.
And no one that when he was named to the staff 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, I guess now, with Steve Sarkisian, that I wasn't more happy to see, because I knew that the University of Texas would get every ounce of effort from him when he arrived on campus. There's no better way to put that than you knew he was going to give you everything he had every day to the best of his ability, which is what he did as a player, and hopefully now what he's doing as a coach, even at Georgia Tech. I mean, so my hat's off to Blake, and I wish him nothing but the best.
Yeah, and totally echo those statements. And of course, everybody's asking, where will Texas go next? And that's going to be very interesting. Somebody asked about Michael Huff. We believe Michael Huff is in play. It's a lot of things will come down to, look, Bobby, is he going to rework the entire secondary staff in some regard? Because he's Scotty Hazelton, the Nichols coach last year. He is the DC at Wake Forest. So you lost two guys to defensive coordinator jobs, by the way. Hazelton had already been a DC. And Hazelton was going to be a 1 year, I call it 1 year rental until a job opened up, like a lot of those guys are that come in that analyst who can now be on field coaches as a part of the staff. So replacing two guys, Nichols and safeties. We'll see if there's anything else. But, it'll be interesting. The things that Sark has to juggle with some of this is coaching versus recruiting. How do you put it all together? It's easier now because you can go send Chris Gilbert on the road, right?
Yep.
You could have a guy who's your safeties coach, but maybe you don't send him to Atlanta to go hit 7 schools in a day. Maybe he goes out there a little bit, but not in bulk recruiting. So it's going to be interesting to see what Sark decides, how he's going to balance all this. Is the secondary done with changes? I need to answer this. Other outlets reported that Gideon was the weakest recruit on staff. Well, first of all, I would say if you're listening to those people, you're listening to the wrong people, man. You're listening to the wrong people. He got Jonah Williams behind the scenes when everybody was vacationing in July. He was on vacation, but he was working with Jonah Williams recruitment.
He's not the weakest. That's ridiculous that they would say that. I mean, look at the Derek Williams.
Whoever said that, you need to cancel your sub.
Yeah, Zealous Hicks, Jonah Williams. I mean, Jordan Johnson Rebel, Xavier Filsaime. I mean, Xavier Filsaime was committed to Florida forever, and he got him late, Jerry. So whatever. I'm not worried about other people saying. Let's talk a little bit more though about what you were talking about remaking of the secondary. Okay. Look, Texas had 3 secondary coaches last year. Blake Gideon was safeties. Scotty Hazelton was the nickel coach, which, by the way, was the first time Texas has had a coach just specifically dedicated to the nickels. So 3 very distinct positions: corner, nickel, safety, right? And then you had Terry Joseph working with cornerbacks. And what I would say to you is, it's my understanding that Sark and his staff, defensive staff, liked having all those people working in the secondary. And it is part of the reason why, not the only by any stretch, the improved pass rush and, players with another year experience. One of the reasons why Texas moved in to be one of the best pass defenses in the country is they were more cohesive on the back end. Jerry, you kept saying it all the time, all year long. They look like a good half-court defense
in
on the back end.
Yep.
A good half-court basketball defense. So it's not perfect. They weren't the greatest athlete, yada, but they were good. And I think that part of that can be attributed to the fact that they had 3 coaches back there. So with Terry Joseph, the lone remaining guy, how does Sark apportion the duties going forward? Like, is there going to be an overall secondary coach and then have a safety and nickels coach? Is there going to be an overall secondary coach and 3 assistants? I'm interested to see what Sark decides to do from that vantage point. I think some of those decisions have already been made theoretically. They just got to put those plans into action. But I think it leaves some meat on the bone for Sark to kind of pick and choose where he wants to go and how he wants to build it. And this is only available now with this new day and age of the NCAA rules allowing as many coaches as you want. For example, Jason McIndoe from Oklahoma State was the H-back coach, essentially, at Oklahoma State and tight ends coach. Now he yesterday announced he's coming to Texas for sure. Okay. Now he was let go at Oklahoma State, so he didn't have a job, and he is going to be one of those 1-year rentals at the tight end / H-back role, we believe. Okay. So maybe long-term, Sark looks at that as another way to get another coach on the field that can add some real experience. So with the new non-limits on-field coaches, how Sark decides to really push forward is interesting. Alan Clark just got added as a on-field assistant for the outside edge linebacker / defensive ends pass rush guy. Okay. That's what Sark's doing. And I just don't know if he's going to take the secondary, where he's now had 2 people leave, and remake the whole thing, or try to retrofit it to the way it used to be. And I'm watching for that, because the only limit now on coaching is how many can go on the road and recruit. That's the only limit. It's not, you could have 3 quarterback coaches if you wanted to, and only one potentially could go on the road, right? So you get 9 coaches on the road. We'll see what happens. And Sark definitely wants Chris Gilbert on the road, and he's not a position coach. And he should be on the road with as effective as he's been. So, look, I think it's a new day and age, and how coaches can manipulate their staffs to the best outcome. Sark has some experience with this because it's time in the NFL where they have some, limits, but not completely. They have assistant coaches for their assistant coach. My point is, let's see what happens over the next week, 10 days, maybe even into March. and how Sark kind of reconfigures this prior to spring ball.
Hey, excuse me. Before we move on, Jerry, I wanted to ask you, because we've had a lot of people, or handful of people ask Jonah Williams yesterday. I guess when he found out the news, he said, "Man," and that's all he said. And then he quoted an article. But a lot of people want to know, is that concerning in any way?
No, that just means Blake's a terrible recruiter.
Oh boy,
there's some real necessary idiots in this world, aren't there? All right. So yeah, I mean, look. Of course, Jonah has a great relationship with Blake Gideon, as he should. So I mean, I of course, but these guys are fine. Jonah's playing baseball. He'll be sitting in position meetings, and life will go on.
Yep.
There you go. All right, Bobby, you getting a lot of comments on your shirt this morning.
Hey, this is from 40 Acres Collection, the only one I wear. You know that when it comes to Longhorn gear, 40 Acres Collection.
And Bobby, if you don't mind, go ahead and tell us about escaping the insurance trap.
Yeah, absolutely. BKCW, you've heard us talk about them all season long, about how Longhorn-owned BKCW helps you escape the insurance trap. You know the drill. Renewal time rolls around. You scramble for quotes and end up stuck with a higher price. BKCW helps you break that cycle. They equip you with a wide variety of tools like safety training programs and a dedicated risk consultant to save you time, make your employees safer, and show insurance carriers, most importantly, that your business is a good fit. They'll dive deep into your past claims if you have any, assess your risk, and deploy tools to help you make your company safer. If you want to learn more about what BKCW can provide you and your business, go to bkcw.com or send an email to info@bkcw.com to get started and get the support you deserve. Longhorn operated, Longhorn owned, bkcw.com. Give them a shout if your business needs any help.
Thank you, Bobby. And a lot of people excited, and rightfully so, this morning for Texas women's basketball, guys. They won yesterday 87-66 against number 24 Vanderbilt. Of course, the big matchup on Sunday against the number 2 South Carolina looms large. But let's talk about yesterday's game. Jerry, we'll start with you.
Well, I think the big thing, look, and you're not going to do it every game because it's a number that's it's just way out of reach very consistently ever in basketball. This was the best three-point shooting game the Texas women have had all season, arguably. 9 of 13 from 3 against a quality opponent. Shea Holly, she's played really well, struggled from 3 this year, had a really good game shooting it. Jordan Lee's the best shooter on the team. So if she gets 3, 4, 5 3-point looks, clean looks a game, she's going to make 40% plus. She's a that level shooter. But they made 9 of 13 threes in that game yesterday. Madison Booker goes over 1,000 points really early in her career, by the way. I mean, so congrats to her. That is really early to get 1,000 points in your career. I mean, you're not even midway through your sophomore season. So congrats to her, one of the best players in the country, future top 3 pick. But it's like anything else, like anything in basketball. If you make a lot of perimeter shots, man, the game looks easy, right? When you don't, it seems like a grind. But now that Texas, if Shea can start to shoot the ball like she has in the past, then that kind of changes what Texas is offensively a little bit, because if they can have her shooting it like she has in the past, plus what Jordan Lee can do shooting it, plus Madison Booker in the mid-range game, Brianna Preston playing more of a role so they add more speed so they can rest Rory a little bit more at times with the interior play, that changes how teams have to respect you and defend you defensively. I think so. We'll see. When South Carolina comes into town, they made 1 3. Texas made 1 3 in that game last time. They got to make more than that against South Carolina.
What are they now? 22-2, Blake? 23-2? Is that right?
Yes. They are third in the SEC at 23-2 and 9-1 in conference play. They're on a
so the other 2 teams. Look at that. They play the number 2 ranked team, number 11 ranked team, and number 6 ranked.
It's a tough. That is a tough
3-game schedule for him right there. Look at that.
Yeah, and we've talked about it. That Vanderbilt game, South Carolina, Kentucky, that 4-game stretch is likely going to decide. Now, there's the SEC tournament. If Texas wins 3 of 4 in that scenario, you could arguably say they're going to end up locking up a 1 seed. So, because that is some real quad 1 action they got coming up here. So they're on the one. They're going to be right now. If the NCAA tournament started tomorrow, I think they're probably a 1 seed. They're on that 1-2 line, but I think they're trending to the 1 seed, especially on NCAA.net. So it's a big stretch coming up. They got the first one out of the way. If they can win 3 of 4, they're set up.
Blake, you were telling us that you had an update on Aaliyah Chavez, the superstar women's basketball recruit as well. What's the latest there? I know you wanted to get that out.
Yeah, definitely. So one team is now out and another team is now in. UCLA officially out of her recruitment. South Carolina is now in, but the people that I talked to this past week told me it still looks great for Texas. Texas Tech and Oklahoma are obviously there too, but they said if they had to pick a top 2, it'd be OU and Texas, with Texas having the edge. So I know anytime we talk women's basketball, we have some Aaliyah Chavez comments.
I think she just went over 4,000 points in her high school career, which is a stupid number, like 600 made threes. It's ridiculous. I will say this, something to keep in mind with that recruitment, and we've been saying this because it plays in basketball recruiting. And I'm not saying Texas Tech couldn't pull the upset at the end of the day. I do think, though, if you wanted to go to Tech, you would sign with Tech early and be the face and help recruit and all that. I'm not sure she did all the things she did to rise to number 1 to stay home. But there's also the Nike component in NIL moving forward. She's always played on Nike circuit. She's always worn the swoosh. That stuff plays into recruiting as well.
Yep. Okay, guys, let's move on here, and we'll come back to some of y'all's questions here in a little bit. Keep them coming in, and we'll definitely get to them. But recruiting, Jerry, is obviously underway. A lot going on. We also have a lot of recruiting questions, but I'm going to let you start.
Yeah, so the official visits, this is kind of the time when there's no face-to-face contact. We're in the dead period. What the Texas staff is doing, and they all have about a week off, right? They're not in the offices. Sark is giving the guys a week off, kind of recharge from the season, then going straight into recruiting. I think February 16th, 17th, they come back to the office, and then they get rolling into spring football. So what they're doing right now, or spring football prep is what I mean to say. I think what a lot of guys are doing right now is they're trying to lock in official visits, because kids are moving really fast in this cycle, setting up you have some kids that have set up 5-6 official visits already. So the official visit process is moving quick. I think the staffs are getting more aggressive with each cycle, trying to set up these official visits. Yesterday, we had Jabari Mack from Destrehan, the 4-star plus receiver. He scheduled Texas June 13th through 15th. Obviously, he'll be at LSU the weekend after. Caden Finley from Aledo is June 20th. We have added a couple more here. I think we're looking at Caden Finley. Obviously, Texas, Notre Dame going to be in a little bit of a battle royale there. But Texas, June 20th is the expectation. Dylan Berryman, the defensive lineman from Ouachita Parish, is now June 13th. I have the updated list on ontexasfootball.com. I think we're up to 14 official visitors right now. Mark Bowman also told us late last night that he does plan to officially visit Texas. I think there's some people are just working through their June plans, their summer plans, setting up the dates. But Mark Bowman, as we've said, is expected to be Texas, Georgia with Oregon in the fight there. And there'll be others, but those are the main 3. And I think Texas, Georgia could be where it comes down to. He'll visit either June 13th or June 20th, right? He'll be at one of those weekends. Caden Dixon Wyatt, the receiver from Mater Dei, the same. So, but Texas has 13 official visitors right now. And there's a lot of guys left to lock in those dates or announce those dates. Jamion Winfield, Javian Osborne. I mean, you could go down the list. There's a lot of guys left to have official visits left to announce schedule. So I think Texas is going to end up around 50 official visits in June. It is my bet, Bobby. But I think that things are on track. Jeff Collins asked us, there's still a high out there for the 26 class. There is. And I don't know when that's going public, by the way. I wish I did. But no, I think that the staff is really working. You're going to see, I think we'll see up over 20 official visits set up, probably a total by Texas here in the next 6, 8, 10 days.
One of them, Tyler Atkinson, is that right? Is expected to visit, but I don't know that he set it up. And then the other one is Anthony Davis, his teammate. Is that right?
Yeah, Grayson, linebacker.
Saying he's going to visit Texas, but actually hasn't set the visit date up quite yet.
Right.
And there's a bunch of guys like that. You mentioned Mark Bowman, the tight end out of Modern Day, Jerry, that's in that category. A lot of people are wondering about him. He reclassified from 27 to 26. Yeah. And one of the interesting things about him, his dad lived in the Lone Star State. So there's a natural tie to Austin. And that's one of the reasons why Texas is involved there as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on in recruiting kind of behind the scenes. It may feel like it's the calm before the storm, I think is the best way to put it. They're trying to line up the pins at the bowling alley so they can knock them down later.
That's the thing about being a college coach. Even when you don't have to be in the office, recruiting never stops for these guys. It really doesn't. I mean, and I was thinking, somebody asked about Caden Prothrow, the tight end from Bowdoin, Georgia. He's a guy that will officially visit. We expect to visit Texas, but he needs to visit in the spring too. And he's from the small town. I was trying to get, because I'm going to go through there in Bowdoin, Georgia. He's on the Georgia-Alabama state line there on I-20 headed south off of I-20. One of the top basketball players in that state too. And I'm not saying he's a major D1 basketball player, but he puts up huge numbers at that smaller school. But he's another tight end that's on the board. I actually exchanged some messages. Somebody asked about Xavier Griffin, the current USC commit out of Gainesville, Georgia, 5-star linebacker. He's planning to make a spring visit to Texas. Doesn't really have a date yet. So a lot of that stuff will happen here in the next 2-3 weeks. Texas will try to get guys in there in late March, April, around spring practices. So that'll keep happening. A lot of people have also asked about Tristan Keys. Tristan Keys announcing 6 official visit dates, but this is what we talked about with Keys before. Texas wants him, he's never been to campus, to make an unofficial visit this spring and then see where they sit, see if this would be a good marriage, if they want to get engaged, and then the official visit date would happen. Same thing that happened with Jamie French in the last class.
Tristan Keys, the wide receiver out of Mississippi.
Yeah, 5-star, one of the best players in America.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal player. We watched his film on this show, and I was like floored. He's apparently got 6 official visits, but to Jerry's point, Texas likes a little slower romance, yes. As opposed to just wham, bam, thank you, ma'am kind of thing.
Yeah, so, I mean, look, because here's the thing. In Texas, I think it's smart because you could offer a kid and set up an official visit, Bobby, but you can also then waste your time.
Oh,
if you've never the family's never been to Austin, the kid's never been to campus, you can suddenly be in a position where, you can throw an official visit date out there. But I think some of the coaches on this staff do it differently too, the way they recruit guys. But there's some coaches that want to get the kids and the family on campus to make sure this is even a fit before saying, hey, here's an official visit and let's set the whole thing up and go from there. Because then you're just wasting everybody's time and you're wasting official visit money and resources and everything. I think there's something to that with the staff members and I think that's what Sark prefers. You can't 100% have that. Sometimes it's not possible. But
I mean, in this day and age where NIL is so important, too, a lot of them are a guy like Tristan Keys, the wide receiver, is going to have a lot of money.
Oh yeah, yeah,
no doubt about it, right? And so, you got to. Everybody's, and I say it all the time. The color of everybody's money is the exact same. It's green. And so what are they? And so if one person offers $800,000 and the other person offers $800,000, which one is he going to pick? He's going to pick the one that he has the better relationship with, the one he thinks is a better fit, etc. So you better recruit them that way. And then NIL takes care of itself, especially if you're in a place like Texas. Now, there may be some changes to NIL coming, and I'm going to talk to somebody about that for tomorrow's Saturday conversation. But my point there is you have to recruit them. You can't just say, oh, wave dollars around and expect everybody to come calling. Not for the ones that you really want, because other people are going to want those guys too for the same amount of money, and they're going to do a better job recruiting. So that's my opinion.
Okay.
By the way, I said Caden Prothro. How good is Caden Prothro? He's look. Mark Bowman's the best tight end prospect in the country. Caden Prothro has a lot of upside on him as a prospect, as frame development. Got really good skill, got really good agility skills, reactive quickness, body quickness. He's got a lot to him. He has really good movement skills for a bigger kid that's 6'5.5", about 215, 220. Do I think Mark Bowman's the best tight end in the country? I do.
Yeah. Hezzy Kent is also coming in, another Georgia tight end, but we don't know what he really is.
Yeah.
Whether he's a tight end.
I don't think colleges know quite yet either what he is.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a leaned offensive line with him, but, look, some people thought Darnell Washington coming out of high school may end up being a 300-pound offensive lineman too. Now, they had different frames in high school, and they were in different programs. But Kent, if he can stay in the 270 range long term, he could be an effective jumbo tight end as a blocker, as a sixth offensive lineman, which you don't have to bring in a sixth offensive lineman. He could really be a difference maker in the run game, but he doesn't do that in high school. So it's not like he's there drive blocking and down blocking guys a lot. So it's kind of he's a total projection. He's a very talented, but he's a total projection for these colleges. And I think that's why you see so many people kind of deciding what he can be. But you know what? You're really talented when Texas staff veers from Atlanta and goes to Brunswick, because that's a full day on the road.
Or Manchester.
Yeah.
And with Justice Terry.
Yeah. Those are full days. You're giving up 5 high school stops to go see one kid.
Yep.
All right, Jerry.
Yeah, this is David Keith Williams. This is hilarious. Most unusual football recruit in a day. Very talented, but you're just kind of like, you're saying it's fun to watch him, but you just kind of sit there and say, what's this guy going to be? What's he going to be? But man, he is a very talented kid. Speaking of talented kids, get yours a pair of Goodrs. Starting at only $25 a pair, 1-year warranty, 30-day free returns. They're lightweight and they're comfortable. They're 100% polarized, no slip, no bounce. From vibrant colors to sleek styles, there's a pair of Goodrs for every personality, designed for both everyday wear and active individuals that love to run, hike, bike, and much more. When do you wear your goodies, Sonnies? On a run, playing pickleball with the Burtons, on a hike, going to the beach, putting your Christmas trees up like the Monroes, because they're so affordable. You don't have to worry about losing or breaking them. You can have a pair for every occasion. Those Texas Goodrs are really popular. Those hook 'em horns Goodrs that you see on Bevo Boulevard before Texas games. If you need a pair of Sonnies, Goodr is giving On Texas Football all caps listeners free shipping. You can go to goodr.com/OnTexas and use that code OnTexas for free shipping. Goodr offers a 30-day money-back guarantee. Don't need it. 100% satisfaction. I put an extra 0 on that for 1,000.
Thank you, Jerry. And let's
Todd Lacey's got his on in the chat. He's got his Goodrs on in the chat.
There you go. Can't beat that.
Those are good-looking pair of Goodrs Todd Lacey has on.
All right, we got a super chat. Speaking of the chat, from Jack, he says, let's pause for a moment and acknowledge that CDC has put together a group of head coaches that are unmatched.
Pretty strong. I think Vic Schaefer is indicative of that. Mike White, the softball coach, coming over. Bob Bowman now, the swimming and diving coach. I mean, that was a crazy hire in a great way. a lot of hope right now for the women's golf coach, Coach Ianello. So there's a number of Angie Kelly we've had on the show before is leading soccer. I think there's a lot of positives around Texas athletics, and I do believe that is in large part because of the coaches that CDC has hired. If they're not performing, or if you're not performing at a high level at Texas, I mean, I think Chris and that group over there in the athletic department have done a pretty good job of finding people that will do that. And in the case of when an Eddie Reese retires, they go out and find perhaps the guy that just won the national championship, right? So that's I agree. I think they've done a great job of aggregating elite coaches, and there's no reason. There's a reason Texas keeps winning the athletic directors cup.
I was going to say, is there any directors cup updates, like current scoring for this cycle? If we can find that and bring it up, it might. We haven't looked at that this year.
Yeah, no, we looked at it about
2 weeks ago,
3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. Dr. Brett Wilkinson, who, by the way, is a UT grad,
right,
is the one that does all of those updates for folks. And Texas was just entering the top 10 at that point. But Texas, that was after the college football final rankings, right? So Texas got a lot of points from that. They entered the top 10, I think. But Texas is also a spring-heavy team. And so all of these spring sports are getting ready to take hold. And I told Brett, Dr. Wilkinson, that we would probably have him back on in about a month to kind of relook at it, where we're headed into March before March Madness starts.
I want to answer this recruiting question because it's actually a good one. And I want to give a little props to the kid. So does the commitment of Grayson Rigdon signed with Arizona State. He had been committed to Wyoming, but didn't sign because I think the running backs coach left. So he kind of kept his recruitment open. He signed with Arizona State on Wednesday, which I think was smart by Arizona State. Does this mean they have another Scatabo? I mean, who knows on that? I don't know. Scatabo was a linebacker / running back with a powerful frame coming out of high school. But everybody just said he was too short. He wasn't fast enough, blah, blah, blah. But he was still a 5'11", 210-pound hammer and out of high school playing running back and linebacker up in California. But Grayson Rigdon is one of the rare. Now, he moved to Columbus, and they won state as a senior. His father's a coach. But he's one of the rare six-man players. And that's where he kind of built his name that ends up as a Power 4 football recruit. And I will say this, going to Columbus definitely helped him get there from a football standpoint, because I think he was headed to Air Force, Blake, was it? Air Force before Wyoming came in on him. So he was a D1. He was seen as a D1 athlete prior to moving to Columbus already, as he was committed. But one of those rare guys that played six-man, even if they transferred away, that played six-man football, that was getting a lot of looks prior to that move to Columbus. But what does it mean for him at Arizona State? It'll be interesting to see. Hey, he was signed under the thought that we're going to develop you for a year and see where it goes as a player. Is that running back? Does he eventually play some safety? Really good basketball player, really good feet. Does he eventually play some safety? I don't know. I think it's going to have to be proven out over time. But congrats to him, because that's a really good accomplishment for a guy that spent most of his high school career in six-man.
I mean, six-man football, that is huge. That is huge. I agree.
Yeah, there's very few of those guys that end up going D1. So I can only think of
what, like one every 10 years?
Probably.
I'd say more than that, probably. I mean, I can only think, granted, I'm not like the keeper of six-man football by any means, but I can only think of two or three, going back to the 90s. And I may be wrong on that, but
the greatest six-man player of all time, or the one that went on to the NFL that I remember, or that I know of, Jack Pardee.
Oh, wow.
I mean, he's that's going back there, right? But I think he was from Cristoval, Texas.
Yeah.
Played at A&M, then obviously the coach of the Oilers and Redskins back in the day. But he that's the only six-man Texas player I know of that made it to the NFL as a player.
Wow. All right, guys, let's take some more questions here. And I've seen this asked multiple times, so I'm gonna ask it. And I'm probably about to butcher this name, but Donald Britt says Rocco Graziano is committed to Oregon, but has not signed. He would be their only kicker. What happens after signing day?
Well, what you don't know, and I don't know anything about him specifically, but that could be NIL and never having to sign a scholarship, right, Bobby? I mean, that could be a deal where he 100% will end up at Oregon, but it may be through NIL where Oregon's not going to use a scholarship on him. Now, if it goes to 105 and he's at Oregon, he immediately probably goes to scholarship. But I have a feeling that that's just not knowing anything about it. I could be wrong. That's probably NIL related.
I don't think it has anything to do with Texas. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think it's. Look, there have been guys through the years, and you just ask what goes on. People ask, well, what happens if guys don't, if they don't sign on National Signing Day? Nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely nothing happens. They can still actually commit to a school. You do not actually physically have to sign scholarship papers,
right,
until you show up on campus if you wanted to. So the letter of intent, as it was formally formulated, you literally could just never sign a letter of intent and keep colleges guessing throughout your entire recruitment. Now, players didn't do that, and colleges tried to encourage players not to do that so that they could actually plan for their future adequately. But there's no word that says they have to sign on National Signing Day or anything like that. It just recruitment goes on. Is all that happens.
We have somebody in the chat that was a 6-man player. Cool.
Oh, cool.
Where'd you play at?
Cool Horn Luke is his name. Yeah. Cool Horn Luke.
Somebody living rent free. Is Texas, Kenny Baker, Texas still recruiting Vodney Cleveland? Absolutely they are. He's out of Birmingham, Alabama. Yes, Texas is still recruiting Vodney Cleveland. It will not surprise me if he's not on campus this spring and then for a June official visit. That will not surprise me at all. Somebody in the chat, I can't remember where I said Tyrone Swoops played 6-man. He actually played 2A because I went to see him up at White Rock. Okay. Somebody said Leighton Vander Esch played 6-man in Idaho. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't know that, but
I was talking about Texas high school guys.
I was talking about Texas.
Yeah, and he played 8-man, which is something that seems to be played up further north, not 6-man.
Nebraska plays 8-man also. I know that because they had Chris Brown, the kicker for Nebraska, that made the NFL, played 8-man, I think.
Yeah. Okay, some more questions here. Let's see. Unreliable narrator. Crowell is set to visit, correct? If so, what date? Also, that new running back recruit from Florida doesn't have Texas in his top 6. Do we actually have a shot at him? Seems like he was committed to Georgia.
You're talking about Derek Cooper, and we'll get to Xavier Crowell. You're talking about Derek Cooper. Yeah, I mean, Texas just offered him late last month. So they got to get all these late offers to me are the same as the Jamie French recruitment. Texas is going to try to get these guys on campus in the spring for an unofficial visit. And if they get those guys on campus and it's deemed a fit by all parties, then that'll move to official visit and that recruitment will continue. That's Tristan Keys, Naeem Burrows, any of the kids that haven't really been to campus yet. Derek Cooper, who you mentioned, there's a few of those guys. Kendall Gerville, defensive lineman at Fort Myers, who's a stud. You asked about Vodney Cleveland earlier. Which of these guys get on campus in the spring, around the spring practice, and at Texas, and the player and their family or party or whoever it is, they say, yeah, let's move forward with this recruitment. That's what Texas is angling for. That's what their number one goal is to get these guys on campus more than once and not just let it be for an official visit weekend. I think Texas can get a lot of guys on set up official visits right now and get a lot of guys on campus. I just don't think that's what they're going to do. Xavier Crowell, one of the best, he was a top 2 ranked running back in 27. He's going to be around the same in 26, Bobby, now that he's reclassed. He is from Jackson, Alabama. He is one of the better contact balance with hip dropping power guys we've seen at that age. But Texas is in on some tremendous running backs in this class. Really good players. Javian Osborne, Amari Latimer, KJ Edwards. I mean, those 5 guys we just mentioned right there, they're all really good.
It's almost like, Jerry, you're saying there's 2 different categories of out-of-state players. Okay. And what I mean by that is there's guys that have visited Texas before from out of state and guys that haven't visited Texas.
Yeah.
And the guys that haven't visited Texas need to get on campus in March or April before the official visit process, so Texas can see if they're actually going to be, there's going to be any sort of real reciprocal interest. Now, that doesn't mean Texas will discontinue recruiting them. I mean, they continue to recruit Justice Terry, right? So it doesn't mean that all is lost. But those are the guys you're talking about, the Tristan Keys, Derek Cooper, Vodney Cleveland, guys that haven't been on campus. And then there's guys that have been on campus, like Mark Bowman, like the other lineman out there, Green.
Yes.
Cody Green. They've been on campus. And so there's almost like two buckets of recruits out when you talk about outside state boundaries. Inside state boundary, almost all of them have at least been to Texas.
Correct. Yeah.
And so there's just different buckets. And if you haven't been to Texas yet, and Texas is not in their top 6, Texas is not worried about that.
No,
because they just want to see, they want to still get you on campus somehow, some way, and then let's go from there.
Yeah.
And maybe that, maybe it doesn't work out, but maybe it does. And Jerry mentioned Jamie French as an example last year.
Yeah.
I just mentioned about Justice Terry not even visiting in the spring. So there are categories and ways to overcome it all if there is reciprocated interest.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the Texas #1 ranked recruiting class. Okay, let's look at this real quick. Justice Terry had never been on campus prior to, when they got him on campus, right?
For the Georgia, was it the Georgia game?
Yep. Jamie French never got on campus till the spring, had never been on campus before. Grayson Littleton, the same, and Texas didn't offer him till late in the process. Myron Charles, the same. Josiah Strarma, the same. Zealous Hicks, the same in the spring, and then he reclassed. I mean, that's the key guys that made you the #1 recruiting class. A lot of the key guys that made you the #1 recruiting class. So what I would say is we talk about all this stuff. We're preparing. We're getting everything prepared for the spring and then June official visits. But just always look back at that prior class. Which of those guys had not been on campus until spring of junior year or even later than that? Now, I do think Texas is more aggressive now. They've offered more guys nationally than I've ever seen before, Bobby. 4 guys in Charlotte, the D lineman that moved in from Sweden and Virginia, the edge up in Virginia. They'd offered an edge up in D.C. They'd offered Dylan Stewart in high school, but he never came to campus. They've offered more guys in Georgia, more guys in Florida than ever before. So the key there is Texas is trying to cast that wider net and see how many of those guys they can get on campus this spring and where that leads in the official visit process. But again, there were a lot of those key members of the #1 ranked recruiting class that just was signed and celebrated that never made it to campus until spring of junior year or beyond.
Yeah, we
Sark
talked about
likes
this
it that way, by the way.
Yeah, yes, Sark likes it that way because it's working.
Yep.
And it also, look, the other thing that I will say this, and this hurt Mac Brown, getting a look at a player during his senior year evaluation, is a very strong indicator of whether or not that young man is going to continue to keep growing and becoming a better player. I mean, that's just, and so, but you can find out whether or not you want to keep recruiting that guy as hard as you have by playing out the recruitment longer. And I think that's one of the keys that Sark has picked up on, whether he was at Alabama when he did it or USC under Pete Carroll or as a head coach at Washington or USC as well. I mean, you get to these power places and you kind of pick players too early, you end up with some dead weight in your recruiting class.
Yes.
USC can. I know Pete Carroll told us that one time. Ed Orgeron was out on that staff as well. He told us that. We thought everybody was going to be the next Dwayne Jarrett or Mike Williams. All of a sudden, we look around the room and we got a bunch of tall, skinny guys that can't really run at wide receiver because we were recruiting but we were recruiting them too early and making decisions too early. So that you make decisions too early, you want a little romance in there. You want a little time to understand who that player is, what makes them tick, and whether or not they're going to keep growing as a player, not just watching film one day and seeing them once.
Hey, I want to bring this up real quick because I want to mention this. Sarah McCoy, has anyone seen the SEC Stories production, The Book of Manning? It's good stuff. If you haven't seen it, Bobby, I'm sure have you watched The Book of Manning?
I can't remember. I've probably seen bits and pieces.
Awesome. It's Blake, have you seen it?
Uh-uh.
Oh, it's awesome. It's an SEC short, ESPN 30 for 30 type production. If y'all haven't, y'all go look it up this weekend. I'm telling you, it's worth the time. It is a great look at Peyton and Eli and Cooper growing up, the Manning household with Archie and Olivia. And it's wild because the pressure that Ole Miss had put on Archie around the Peyton Manning recruitment in the Tennessee decision, and how he just stood strong and said, look, it's my kid. It's my kid's decision. Now I did add more pressure for Eli to go to Ole Miss, right? I mean, but and get David Cutcliffe hired, and get one kid there. Now Cooper will obviously sign with Ole Miss, and the spinal stenosis cut his career short. But it's a great watch, man. That one's great. If you haven't seen some of those, the Miami Hurricanes is fabulous, and I Hate Christian Laettner was actually really good too. And that one was probably my favorite one because. Christian Laettner we talk about leadership all the time. Man, he's one of the best leaders I've ever seen, and he did it his way. But those are three great watches if y'all haven't seen those. If you got a little time this weekend.
Okay, y'all. Before we move on to our next set of questions, I'm going to let everyone out there know about Prize Picks because it's the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions, yes, billions with a B, of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to everyone. It's the best way to get in on the action in more than 30 states, including right here in the Lone Star State, along with California, Georgia, Florida, and much more. And obviously, the big game is almost here, and it's now or never. Don't miss out on the last football game of the season with Prize Picks. The best place to win cash while watching the big game. Prize Picks is doing a big game free square that is basically a lock. Patrick Mahomes only needs one passing yard for you to win that square. And I included the Mahomes square in my picks, but I also added Saquon Barkley to have one touchdown, Jalen Hurts to have less than a 67.3% completion rate, A.J. Brown to have less than 70.5 receiving yards, and Xavier Worthy to have more than 5 receptions. To join me in those picks, download the app today. Use promo code ONTexas to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Doesn't matter if you win or lose, you still get the $50, and that's a win in my book. Again, code ONTexas to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup, and that's Prize Picks. Run your game.
Hey, on that, you know what's kind of look, y'all know I'm not a big NFL guy. I don't spend my Sundays watching all NFL games. But what's interesting to me is, so Josh Allen was named MVP yesterday, right? Which from a recruiting standpoint is really cool. No offers out of high school, goes JUCO, goes to Wyoming. Everybody has to run their own race. You can, not highly recruited. Lamar Jackson, I believe Lamar Jackson got second in MVP voting. I went and saw him in high school. Florida, they didn't think it was good enough. A lot of people didn't. So they're your top two guys in MVP. A lot of the major schools didn't recruit those guys. I know Lamar went to a good school, but a lot of the majors couldn't make decisions on Lamar Jackson, whether he was good enough or not. Texas looked at him and couldn't decide if he was good enough or not. Oof, what a mistake that was. Josh Allen, no offers out of high school. Then you have Pat Mahomes, Bobby, not a national recruit. Jalen Hurts ends up at Alabama, wasn't a national recruit until late in his career because he's at Channel View, even though he beat North Shore. So the 4 quarterbacks being talked about the most this week, none of them were the highly ranked guy. Got to run your own race.
Here's one that's going to look. What about the guys that got put in the Hall of Fame? Let me give you this list. Jared Allen, Idaho State.
Yep.
Antonio Gates didn't play college football. Sterling Sharp. Eric Allen. Eric Allen went to Arizona State.
Yep.
My point being, they don't all go to the biggest schools. The one thing that I think is key that you'll see with those guys is that they have a constant trajectory upwards. Even if they come from a small school, they keep leveling up. That's what I see whenever those guys that just won't be denied.
Yeah.
And Josh Allen was a guy that wouldn't be denied. Lamar Jackson was. So it's good. And guys that raise their teams, which is what Jalen Hurts did at Channel View. I still can't believe Texas didn't go on him. I still can't to this day. Drives me nuts.
Yep. And same like with the Lamar Jackson for the Florida schools, right? I mean,
Jalen Hurts was tailor-made for Texas.
Yes.
Coach's son, hard-nosed, great person off the field, just tailor-made. Could not. Jerry, you and I had conversations during that period.
I've told the story before. Like I went to a regional track meet to see Austin Deculus when he was a junior, the offensive tackle, and went to LSU's in the NFL now. And Jalen Hurts was there competing in the shot put. And that kind of blew my mind. I went up to him and said, "Hey, why are you doing this? My team needs points. My team needed points in the district meet." He just went out there and pressed the shot put 45, 47 feet, whatever it was. He just did it for his school, did it for his team. That's the way he's always been, right? I mean, that's the way he's always. Now, was there a more talented guy at Alabama eventually than him? Yeah. But did he go to Oklahoma and still continue to maximize? It's talent maximization. Guys run different races to get there, but the guys that really push and maximize. Colt McCoy, talent maximizer to the nth degree, right? You can just go down the list of these guys. But that intestinal fortitude and that talent maximization piece is 1,000% needed unless you're a total freak.
All right, we got some more super chats, guys. So we're going to start with this one from Jackson S. Thank you, Jackson. How do you learn to scout football if you couldn't play?
Watch and listen to other people. Did it. Yeah, watch and listen. You watch, 150, 250 football practices and games and whatnot, and you'll get there. It's not real hard. There is an art to it for sure, but people know what you listen to good people, you'll figure that out.
Yeah, and I went through this with somebody recently. It was NBA. Because a lot of people think, you have to be Division I player, to be an NBA coach and be a high-level coach. There's an NBA head coach that didn't play college basketball right now. Didn't play. There's 5 NBA head coaches who are D3 players or NAIA, whichever one it was when they came out. So to Bobby's point, man, a guy's an NBA head coach that did not play college basketball.
Well, the GM of the Philadelphia Eagles didn't play college football, or he's the best, maybe the best GM in the game right now.
Yeah.
So I think it's not, playing is not the same. And I do think that there's a thought for me, for example, like Pete Rose was one of my favorite baseball players growing up, right? And he was you talk about a talent maximizer and all that stuff when it came between the lines and how hard he played. there's a thought there that he may not have been a great coach because he expected that level of commitment from every single player.
Yeah.
Well, you're never going to get that from every single player. And so some of those guys that play, they expect more or see more or think they're going to get more when they've actually played. And that's not always the case either. There's still a nuance and art to it.
Okay, and then we have another super chat here. Jose actually changed it up, but thank you for the super chat, Jose. He said, is Georgia 2A ball similar to Texas 2A ball like Justice Terry played?
I don't know the exact. Let me look at the exact enrollment numbers, but from a talent perspective, I think it's very similar. You know, it's very very similar in terms of the talent level you face, 2A to 2A. And I know some people, talk about some of that. Well, what does that mean for a guy? I always go back to this. Some of the best running backs that the state of Texas ever produced, Bobby, were small school guys in East Texas. I think grade is great no matter where they play. I mean, Arch Manning played at Isidore Newman. They were never going to beat Southern Lab in a playoff game. They didn't have enough speed around him or anybody else. Like, they got put up against Berkeley Prep on an ESPN game and got the heck beat out of them, right? That was going to happen. But I think at some point, the talent level, the talent is what it is. And those guys can play anywhere again, but they have to have the motivation. But I'm looking up Georgia State of 2A enrollment to see how close it is to Texas. That's actually a good question.
Okay, well, while you do that, we'll do some more questions here. And I can answer this one from Dylan and Thunderpup. Also asked as well, does the baseball show premiere today? Yes. Later on today, Jeff and CJ and I are about to sit down here in just a little bit and work on that. So that will be out later this afternoon. And then Jeff Collins wants y'all's thoughts on Will Harris to replace Gideon.
He's worked with Sark before, first of all, at USC, or played with him, something like that. Look, I think that's possible. I think, and I'll go back, since a lot of people have joined since we started this morning, earlier this morning. I think that the question I have for Sark right now, if I were to be able to get him in a room and just say, give me the real skinny, is what is he doing right now with the secondary as a whole? Because in this offseason, he's now lost 2 of his 3 coaches in the secondary. And I know Blake Gideon made the headlines, and he should. Safety job. Now he's becoming the defense coordinator at Georgia Tech. But Sark also lost Scotty Hazelton, the Nichols coach. And Hazelton was an old wily vet that came in and just worked with the Nichols. So that's 2 of your 3 defensive back coach. Terry Joseph has been your corners coach since day one. Okay. So you have a chance now with the new NCAA rules that allow as many coaches as you want on your staff to totally remake how you coach secondary and how you. So what is he going to do? And not all of those guys have to go on the road and recruit.
Right. That's the big part too.
And so before, he had to hire guys that could recruit and coach. Now, is he going to have a corners coach, a Nichols coach, and a safeties coach, and then a secondary coach? I mean, theoretically, he had 4. He might just have 2 again. Roll back to 2 instead of having 3 like he did this fast. I don't know. I think the decision he's made. I think he's actually already made the decision, but he hasn't told me. So I think we have to wait. So Will Harris might be a guy. Marcel Yates is a guy to watch for. He's got experience with Pete Kwiatkowski, formerly at Boise State, and Michael Huff on campus already is a guy that might just be a safeties coach, but might not be the full go on the road recruit coach. I mean, there's a number of different ways that Sark can approach this. The permutations are endless, and I'm not privy to what he's decided. But I think that, how he decides to go about mixing recruiting with coaching in the secondary, the fact that he's lost 2 guys this offseason in both Gideon and Hazelton gives him an opportunity to remake the whole thing and how he sees college football going forward. And we're already seeing him do that a little bit at other positions. Alan Clark, pass rush coach. That position wasn't available until the NCAA changed. Jason McKindo, the new H-back coach. That position was not available until they offered this new on-field role. We'll see what that means, and see what he envisions for that position and what he wants to do. It could remain exactly the same. I think it gives him a chance to be a little creative, though. My sense.
By the way, I wanted to answer that question earlier. Georgia, state of Georgia 2A enrollment can actually be a little higher. It may have a different number that they get to. In Texas, it's up to like 253-ish. I think it can go a little higher into the low 300s in Georgia.
All right, Bobby, before we get to our last question or two, we take this opportunity to let everyone know how to escape the insurance trap.
Yeah, absolutely. Our friends at BKCW have been with us a couple of years now, sponsoring On Texas Football, and we really appreciate them. If you have a business that is needing information and I would say a second look at their business insurance, give them a call over at bkcw.com or an email, info@bkcw.com. Texas owned and operated and operating out of their headquarters in Austin. They use a 5-step process to identify your business's weak spots, design a plan, execute it, and monitor your situation throughout the year so that you can lower your insurance costs and effectively manage your company's risk and employee benefits. It also gets you out of that dreaded insurance trap where simply other insurance agents may just drop you a note and say, oh, your premium has gone up. They get out in front of it for you. Again, get us started with a free risk assessment at bkcw.com or send them an email, info@bkcw.com, 512-250-5055.
Okay, guys, we got time for just another question or two here. And let's take this question.
Before you bring that up, I got to correct myself. So I just looked this up. Manchester, Georgia is actually big, a big 2A. They have 430 students. So like if you look at Hooks High School, they have 319 students, but they're in 3A. So in Georgia, it's a little bigger. The 2A is more like 3A, and Manchester would be a 3A D1 level type of enrollment in Texas, just to clarify, because I know the chat will bring receipts, as you should.
Thunder Pup, and Jerry, I know you answered this earlier, but we've had a lot of people join. He says, any highs possible?
Yeah, so this is what we talked about earlier. So look, in the case of Max Wright, that probably would have happened a couple of days after junior day had Sark been there for the junior day and not sick, right? I think that slowed some things down in terms of some of those early decisions. And we had said outside of quarterbacks, look at offensive line. I'm still looking at offensive line in the spring. We'll see where that goes. But I still look at offensive line this spring for sure. And by spring, when does spring officially start? When I say spring, I think of March.
Then we'll do one other one here. And it's another recruiting question. Joseph Patterson says, it seems like every top recruit in the country has the A&M in their top 5, not seeing many with visits or anything to do with Texas in theirs. Your thoughts?
Every top recruit has A&M in their top 5. I haven't noticed that. I'll just be honest. I think that's a little overreaction, Joseph. I'll put it that way. But DFL doesn't have them in it.
But look, I'll say this: we talk about Texas hitting Georgia hard. A&M's hitting Georgia is harder than they ever have as well. So, you're going to see, I think, similar in a lot of lists and recruitments because both these schools are hitting the same states with more effort than they ever have. So. It doesn't look, and they're two of the top NIL programs too. Let's just be real for a second. They're going to be in there.
Okay, well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football presented by BKCW. Want to thank them along with Goodr and Prize Picks for sponsoring today's show. Of course, thank all of you for watching with us today and being a subscriber of OTF. If you're not, we'd ask that you please hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell so you're notified anytime we go live, post content, whatever it may be. But just remember, we can't be live all the time. So head on over to ontexasfootball.com, become a member for $49.95 a year if you use promo code OTFOG. Again, that's OTFOG at ontexasfootball.com. And Bobby, what do we have later today?
We got the live stream at 1 with Jerry and Rod coming up. We also have that Bases Loaded show that you talked about. And then tomorrow, I'm gonna have a conversation with one of the chief pundits or analysts concerning NIL and this House settlement that we're all wondering what the outcome is going to be. I hope you guys enjoy that. That should be very relevant and interesting, I hope, to people that are want to hear about the business of college sports a little bit. And then we've got a number of different things coming up this weekend as well. On Super Bowl Sunday, by the way, we are going to do our live stream. One note about timing of it. We're going to do it at the start of halftime and then go through about the first 5-10 minutes of the second half. So join us during halftime. We may watch a little bit of that together, talk a little bit about it, but come join us on Sunday night as well for the live stream. That's when we'll be back on air at that time. A little bit different than our normal Sunday night routine.
All right, well, hope you all have a great weekend. Don't forget, Texas softball starts today as well, 3:30. You'll have to listen to that one, but then you can watch the 6 o'clock one on ESPN+. So their season starts today officially. So good luck to Coach White and his group.
I'm at the Texas Vandy basketball game tomorrow, by the way.
Nice, Bobby. Nice.
In Nashville.
Who are you cheering for?
I'm excited about that. Get to go see that. And then also the women play Sunday against South Carolina. #1 team in the country comes to Austin.
I've seen some other people in the chat say they're going to be there as well, Bobby. So OTF will be well represented in Nashville.
Hey, by the way, we must say now, to end on after the ugly loss to Arkansas, Texas is back in must-win territory, and they're in must-win territory on the road against a quality team in SEC play for the men. That's where it's at.
Yep. Okay, well, we will see y'all on Monday morning. Have a great weekend. And for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you then.